Hello and welcome to a new episode of One Chord a Week. This is Tonelli, and today's chord has a bit of an intimidating name, but it's actually very simple. And I think we've had a couple of more complex chords lately, so this week is going to be easy. And you're just going to learn the chord and you'll be able to pop it into your chord progressions with no problem at all. All right, so let's begin. The 13th chord is a theoretically complex chord, but in actual use, it's very simple. It's often used as a substitute for the regular dominant 7th chord. That's a fundamental chord, so in case you missed that video, here's a link for you, you can catch up on it. All right, but that's basically how it's used. So where do we find it? Well, we find it pretty much in all styles of music because all styles of music use the dominant function. So it's very common in jazz music. You'll find it very often there. You'll find it in modern classical music. You'll find it in film scores. And then, everything that's heavily based on dominance. So the blues, of course, you'll find it sometimes in rock, especially on cleaner sounds because a lot of tensions are hard to deal with distortion. And you'll find it in funk, in a lot of styles of music. And it's really a great chord to have because with little effort, because you can just basically pop it in anywhere there's a regular 7th chord, you'll get this deeper dimension to your progressions. So let's see how we build it. The only part of this chord that could be a bit intimidating is the formula, just because it holds so many notes in it. But it's actually very simple. We have, as the basis for the chord, a dominant 7th chord, so root, 3rd, 5th, and minor 7th. And then on top of it, we're going to add the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th. Now, this sounds like a lot, but in actual use, many of these notes are skipped, all right? So it's a lot simpler than it sounds. But the full formula is like this. We have, of course, C as the root, as always in these videos. Then we have E and G, which are the major 3rd and perfect 5th. And then the B flat, which is the minor 7th. This is our basis dominant 7th chord, which serves as the building foundation for the rest of the chord. And now we're going to stack 3 more thirds on top of the 7th. So we're going to go from the 7th to the 9th, which is D. Then from the 9th, another 3rd up to the F. And then another 3rd up to the A, which is the 13th. So we have root C, major 3rd E, perfect 5th G, minor 7th B flat, and then the 9th is D, the 11th is F, and the 13th is A. So a lot of notes, but they're all stacked thirds. It's a 3rd between the root and the 3rd, another 3rd between the 3rd and the 5th, another 3rd between the 5th and the 7th, and between the 7th and the 9th, and the 9th and the 11th, and the 11th and the 13th, it's all thirds, all right? So it's actually very simple. You just stack thirds. As a matter of fact, if you count the notes, it's all the notes in the scale. It's 7 notes for this chord. Of course, it gets a lot easier when it comes time to actually play it or analyze the sound. So let's get right to the sound of it and see how we can use this chord. It's a beautiful sounding chord, the 13th chord, and as you may have noticed, I'm only playing 4 notes, and I just told you that it has 7 notes. So let's deal with that first, because it's the most important thing. These chords are not easily manageable when you have to play 7 notes. Doesn't matter the instrument. On the guitar, it's even worse, of course. You don't even have 7 strings. Well, most guitars don't. But even if we had 100 strings, we still probably wouldn't use all the notes. Usually, harmony is built over 4 voices. Not always, but basic foundational harmony is 4 voices. You have the bass, the tenor, the alto, and the soprano. That's how they're built. Even if they're not singers, they're looked at as 4 voices. So all chords tend to be reduced to 4 chords. Now, how do you reduce a chord that has 7 notes to 4? Well, it's quite simple. For example, the 5th of the chord, in this case is G, doesn't really add much. It doesn't have a lot of character, right? And so the G is the first note that we lose, or the 5th. So now we only have 6 notes. We have the root, the 3rd, skip the 5th, 7, 9, 11, and 13th. Now, the 3rd and the 7th must be used because they are the ones that tell you that it's a dominant 7th chord. It's a tritone we talked about in many other chords, like the 7sus4 chord, the diminished chord. Here's links in case you need them, all right? So 3rd and 7th we have to keep them. The root we might lose if the bass player is playing it or another instrument is covering the bass. but in this case we're going to leave it. Okay, so we have root, third, and fifth. I'm sorry, root, third, and seventh. We do lose the fifth. Now we have the three extensions, 9, 11, and 13. Of course, we need the 13, right? Because it's important, obviously. It's our note that gives the name to the chord. So we keep 1, 3, 7, 13. 9 and 11 we can lose. As a matter of fact, 11 sounds pretty bad together with the third. So we're going to skip the 11, and then the ninth is kind of there if you want it. You could swap it for the root if you don't need the root, or on the guitar maybe, or other harmony, you can use certainly 5 notes. So usually you will see root, third, seventh, and then the 13th, and maybe the ninth. Okay, so usually it's 5 notes, sometimes 4 without the ninth or the root. Okay, so that's why you can play it perfectly on the guitar and it still works. As a matter of fact, this one that I'm playing here, which of course I'll show you in a little bit, 3 positions on the neck as always, but if I'm playing this, you look at the notes I'm playing a C, a B flat, which is the minor 7th, necessary of course, the E is the major third, and then I'm playing the A. This is without anything else, so I don't use the ninth, I don't use the fifth, and I don't use the 11th. But listen to the function. It still resolves beautifully onto the root F. Okay, so I have C13th as the 5 and F major as the 1. Okay, so the function stays the same even though I'm losing a lot of notes. Right, so that's the first thing. Another thing that's worth mentioning really quick is that this chord shouldn't be confused with the 6th chord, okay, because the note is the same. The 13th is the same as the 6th. But the 13th chord is a dominant chord, so it's a dominant 7th chord plus a 13th. The 6th chord, or major 6, is a major chord with a 6th. Okay, so the first one is C, E, G, B flat, that makes it a 7th chord, plus an A. The 6th chord is C, E, G, A. Totally different function. As a matter of fact, we already studied the major 6th chord. And so, I'm sorry to say it, but here's a link. You have a major chord with a 6th that functions as a tonic, as a root chord. It's totally different. This one, the 13th chord, functions as a dominant chord. All right, so completely different. As a matter of fact, this one will resolve into the other one. Right, so don't get them confused. 6th is one thing, 13th is another. All right, so that's extremely important. I've seen people go like, this doesn't sound right. Well, of course, because it's a dominant chord. This is very unstable and it has to resolve. The 6th chord, is a tonic chord, so it's peaceful and restful, and it's kind of the destination of the dominant. All right, just so you know it, keep it in mind. All right, so let's move on to 3 fingerings for this chord. I really enjoy the sound of it. I think it sounds somehow peaceful. I don't know why, because it's a dominant, so it's not very restful, but it sounds, I don't know, it sounds like a happy place to me. So I'm going to show you how to play this specific position right now. We start on the 3rd fret of the 5th string with the C, then we play the major 3rd E on the 2nd fret of the 4th. Now we use a little bar here on the 3rd fret for both the 3rd and 2nd string. This gives us our B flat and D. And then here's our 13th up here. And there you have it. So this chord actually uses a 9th. Okay, so we have a root, a 3rd, the 7th, the 9th, and the 13th. Okay? Beautiful chord. The 2nd position is a bit higher on the neck, and it's always good to have because we have the root on the 6th and then on the 5th string, so that covers a bit of the fretboard. And we have the root on the 8th fret of the 6th string. Then we skip the 5th string and we play 8 on the 4th, 9 on the 3rd, and then we play 10 on the 2nd string. I like to add the D, the 9th. If you want, you don't have to, but I like to bar the 1st string on the same fret. Like that. As always, be mindful of the 5th string. You should not play that. So if you play with a pick, mute it with this finger. If you play with your fingers, which is a bit hard to do because there's so many notes, but then just skip it, all right? So it's important with this chord to always control the 5th string. For our final position, I'm gonna stick to the 8th fret, and I give you a big bar chord, which are always useful. And it's basically the same as a regular 7th chord. So 8, 10, 8, 9. But then when we get to the 2nd string, we're going to add the A, the 13th note, or the 6th, here on the 10th fret, okay? So it goes like this: 8, 10, 8, 9, 10, 8. Of course, the index finger plays a bar here and covers the whole thing. And this is very useful when you want to play big chords. It has a lot of range from the very bottom to the very top. Right? So these are the 3 positions. Now, as far as scales go, we'll keep it quick and simple because it's a dominant chord and is not the first one we look at. And so the scales are very similar. I would probably stick to Mixolydian and Lydian dominant. So the first one is Mixolydian, is a major scale with a flat 7. This note here, which is the one that makes the chord dominant. And of course, it includes all the 9th, 11th, and the 13th. They're all here. And over a simple 13th chord, you can play it. Right? Very basic Mixolydian sound. The next scale is the Lydian dominant, and you have to be a bit more mindful with this one because you cannot be playing a C13th chord with an 11th because the 11th is sharpened in the Lydian dominant. So usually you will not find an 11th in the C13th chord, as we saw earlier in the formula. But just in case, so you know, if something sounds strange, it's probably because somebody's playing a C13th with an 11th and you're trying to play the raised one, all right? But the idea behind this scale is the same as a Mixolydian with a raised 4th. So the F in this case is sharp. All right, and it sounds very cool. Right? It works very well. Just be careful of that 11 thing. So if you have an 11 in the chord, don't play this scale. Very well, I hope you enjoyed the video and that you realize that even if a chord has a big name and it's made up of a bunch of notes, it doesn't make it more difficult. As a matter of fact, slowly as you watch all the videos in this series, you'll come to realize that they're all pretty much the same thing. You know, you figure out the intervals, you learn a few positions, or many if that would be better, and just, you know, add it to your toolbox. And chords are so important and sometimes people are intimidated by them, but you shouldn't be. You know, it's quite simple stuff and I'm trying to explain it, you know, every week. Maybe sometimes we repeat a couple of things and we go over them many times, sometimes through the videos, but it's just so that as you watch them, you slowly become familiar with the concept of chords, and then you know, many doors will open up for you. All right, so again, thank you very much for watching. If you did like the video, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, maybe spread the word a little bit. It will really make things a lot easier for me. And thank you very much, and I will see you next week with a new chord. Bye-bye.